Welcome to Everything Education with Dr. Roz, the podcast where we explore practical and creative strategies to enhance classroom experiences. I'm your host, Dr. Roz. Today's podcast is on the topic of creating a thinking classroom, which is a three-part series. Part three of this series will be shared with you today, which is the final part of this series. As a refresher, a thinking classroom is a learning environment designed to promote deep thinking, critical problem solving, and active engagement among students. It shifts the focus from traditional rote learning to a more dynamic, student centered approach. So, let's get started. Answering questions in a thinking classroom requires a thoughtful approach that encourages critical thinking and active participation. Here are some strategies to effectively address questions in this dynamic environment. So, you guessed it, our topic today for part three, answering questions. Number one, promote inquiry based responses. Encourage further questions. Instead of directly answering a question, ask a related question that prompts deeper thinking from the student. So, for example, that's a great question about photosynthesis. What do you think might happen if plants didn't have access to sunlight? Quality questioning in any learning environment is going to deepen the learning for the student. Number two, foster peer collaboration. Redirect some questions to peers. Encourage students to share their thoughts and solutions with each other before you, the teacher, provide an answer. So, for example, what do you all think? Can anyone explain this concept in their own words? That promotes students to think deeper, have richer responses, and be able to think about what they are learning in the classroom. Next, Socratic questioning. Guided questions. Use Socratic questions to guide students to the answer through a series of thought provoking questions. For example, why do you think this event happened? What evidence supports your conclusion? These types of questions will not only enrich the learning environment, it will also help the students when they are writing because they're able to think about their thinking. Socratic questioning is definitely a great option. Next, provide think time. Allow the students to have a moment. Wait time is so important. Give students a few moments to think about the question before expecting a response. If you're eager and you can't wait, use a timer. Set your watch. Give the students at least 30 to 45 seconds to ponder what the question is asking. This allows for more thoughtful and considered answers from your students. So, for example, take a moment to think about how this equation works. We'll discuss it in a minute. And then you set your timer for a minute. Next, encourage multiple perspectives. Diverse answers enriches the environment. Accept and explore multiple answers to a question, highlighting that there can be more than one correct or valid perspective. For example, that's one way to solve the problem. Does anyone have a different method or approach they like to share? Multiple perspectives enriches the learning environment and provides diversity. Next, model thinking aloud. It's okay to talk to yourself. Think alouds are very important. It models to your students what they should be doing on their own, independently. So verbalize your thought process when addressing a question to model critical thinking for your students. When you are modeling an activity or lesson for your students, talk your way through it while you're working your way through it. So, for example, Let's break this down step by step. First, we need to understand the context and then you go on and explain it. Using visual aids. A visual explanation goes far. Diagrams, charts, and other visual aids to help explain complex concepts and reinforce understanding. Allow students to create their visual aids. Use graphic organizers, mind maps, bar charts. Allow students to develop graphic images to help support their learning. So you can say, let's draw a quick diagram to visualize how this process works. Encourage that with the students. It's also a great way to infuse these visual aids into their note taking. Next, promote reflective thinking. Reflection is important. Encourage students to reflect on their answers and their thought processes. That will give them an opportunity to think, wow, I understand this and I can share this with my peer, or I can share this in the classroom. That reflective thinking is so important. It helps them elaborate in their answers as well. So, for example, you could say, or you could ask rather, why do you think that answer makes sense? How did you arrive at that conclusion? Again, you're fostering reflective thinking. Number 9, incorporate real world examples. Anytime you can relate learning to the real world and their real lives, it's impactful. Use real world examples to make abstract concepts more relatable and understandable. So, for example, how does this principle apply to something you encounter in everyday life? Or if you're teaching a math class and you're talking about perimeter, literally get the students up and have them go to the perimeter of the classroom. Those type of real world experiences are important so they can understand, wow, I could use this in carpentry. So those types of experiences are valid and needed. And finally, number 10, encourage evidence-based responses. This will help them across the board, not only in the classroom, but on state assessments as well. Cite evidence, cite textual evidence. Ask students to support their answers with evidence or reasoning. So, for example, can you provide evidence or reasons to back up your answer? Teach your students how to annotate text. Teach your students how to highlight. Teach your students how to search and understand the information that they're reading. Implementing these strategies can help create a rich, engaging learning environment where students are encouraged to think critically, collaborate, and actively participate in the learning process. Well, there you have it. Innovative and practical classroom thinking strategies that can transform your teaching experience. Remember, the key to an effective lesson plan in a thinking classroom is for the learning environment to include collaboration, communication, consistency, and creativity for everyone. Thank you for tuning in to Everything Education with Dr. Roz. Subscribe now and embark on a journey of transformation and growth with us. Until next time, let's continue to transform education for everyone, everywhere.